What's going on, guys? Rolly Rod's back with another Retribution Paladin Rework video. This is update number 2, so if you haven't watched my first video, I'm going to leave a card up to it right here. In that video, I go over basically every single talent on both the class and Paladin tree, so make sure and go watch that video and then come back for the update. But with all that out of the way, guys, let's get into it. All right, let's get into it. So Kyvax is back again with another blue post. My plan is to just kind of go through the blue posts, switching between the blue posts and in-game, and just kind of talk about the changes and what they mean and what they could mean. One thing I do want to draw your attention to, though, is this last little paragraph right here. He says, as you can see, we have not yet focused on tuning. We are still working on the amount of single target talent choices, Holy Strike / Radiant builds, and Retribution's overall mobility package, but we intend to move into tuning in the near future. So if you're around for Dragonflight beta, it's kind of the same thing. They did a lot of tree changes and seeing how things interacted and seeing how, you know, the different builds and all the stuff, and then they moved into like the tuning phase at the very end to make sure nothing is overly powerful, anything is underperforming, all of that stuff. So if I had to guess, based on the first iteration, what we got now, and probably what we're gonna get next week, hopefully, I would probably say probably 80%. I'm not 100%. I'm not a game dev, but if I had to guess, probably about 80%. So hopefully next week we get the final tree, and then hopefully the week after that we get some tuning, and then maybe 10.0.7. Again, I'm just speculating, I'm just guessing. I have no actual facts about this at all. But we'll start with the class tree. So class tree, Unbound Freedom is now located on the class tree for Retribution specialization only. Healing Hands is now located on the class tree for the Retribution specialization only. Zealot's Paragon has been removed from the talent tree for the Retribution specialization only, and there's a new talent, Vengeful Wrath, Hammer of Wrath, always critically strikes. This talent is located on the class tree for the Retribution specialization only. And here it is. So the changes that we just talked about, Unbound Freedom right here, now on the class tree, but is for Retribution only, and Healing Hands now on the class tree, but it's for Retribution only. This is really interesting because if it's Retribution only, why isn't it over here? And I think my best guess is we got obviously our tree is a lot bigger. There are a lot of choices here. There's not enough talent points to get. I mean, just look at this. A lot of these things, you probably have to pick about 2/3. I would say. So my guess is maybe there was too many choices here, and so they decided to move them over to the class tree where we have a lot less choices and we have a lot more freedom to kind of move things around. But that's just my guess. It was a choice node. If you watched my last video, Healing Hands, it was Healing Hands versus Unbound Freedom, and it was like right here, right next to Guided Prayer and Light Sterility up here. But they're both really good talent choices. They're both, I would love to have both of them, and the fact that we can now have both of them, I think is great. And again, because we have so many talents now and not enough points, the fact that it's over here makes us lose a few things here and there, but the fact that we can get them and it's a lot easier to get them here than over here, I like it. One other change that wasn't in the patch notes that I noticed was Obduracy and Turn Evil have swapped places. I'm not 100% sure why, and I don't know the reasoning. My only guess, and the only thing that kind of makes sense to me, is like Turn Evil is a type of CC. Rebuke is, it's not CC, but it's stopping a cast. And then there's Obduracy, which is, it gives you speed and avoidance. You can take that. Blessing of Freedom is, you know, getting you out of a route, and then you have speed, and then you have your main movement ability. So it kind of makes sense that all these kind of deal with like movement, I guess. That's kind of my only real reasoning that I could think of that. I don't know if it was like a problem for Holy Paladin or Prot Paladin, these being there. I didn't really see it as a problem for Ret, but hey, it's there. And the last change that we have on the class tree is Vengeful Wrath, replacing Zealot's Paragon. Zealot's Paragon in beta, it was Judgment and Hammer of Wrath extend wings by a second, and then they nerfed it down to half a second. and it just was never really viable after that. And I don't think anybody was really taking it, especially once we made all these changes. It wasn't going to get used. So Vengeful Wrath, Hammer of Wrath, always critically strikes. It's kind of cool. There's some changes in the tree that deal with Hammer of Wrath, and the fact that we can make it always critically strike is really interesting, and we'll talk about that when we get to the Retribution tree. One last little side note, a lot of people are also asking about Lightforged Blessing. Divine Storm heals you and up to a certain number of allies for 5% of your maximum health. A lot of people were asking like, well, what does it look like for Prot and all that stuff? So, and you'll see Helping Hands and Unbound Freedom are gone, but Lightforged Blessing is tied to Shield of the Righteous for Prot and for Holy. And you can see down here, Prot still has access to Zealot Paragon as well as Holy. All right, time for the good stuff. New talent, Vanguard of Justice. Your single target Holy Power abilities cost 1 additional Holy Power and deal 20% increased damage to ranks. So that talent is right here, Vanguard of Justice. It's a really interesting talent because one of the big problems that people had with Justicar's Vengeance is that it cost 5 Holy Power, and it still did less damage than Final Verdict. Yeah, it heals you, and the weird like increased damage to stun targets thing is there. The fact that they added a damage increase to it is very interesting, and I'm curious to see if it ends up being used. Now, we do generate more Holy Power on the PTR than we do on live. We'll talk about Crusading Strikes and the changes that they made to that. You can take Boundless Judgment, which will generate an additional Holy Power. You have 2 charges of Blade of Justice, which one Blade of Justice already generates 2 Holy Power. So between those 2 things, now we have 2 abilities that generate 2 Holy Power. So I'm curious to see how this ends up being played, or if it ends up being played. From right now, my very, very limited testing, it felt really slow. Getting all the way up to 5 Holy Power, even with the increases, it just felt really, really slow. Very, very little testing that I was done. I didn't change a whole lot of talents or try a whole lot of stuff. I'll save that for another video when we get final trees and final tuning. But as of right now, it feels really slow. Maybe it's good in PvP. I don't do a lot of PvP, so I'm not 100% sure, but we'll see where it goes. New talent, Divine Wrath. Divine Wrath is back, but this time it's a passive. Avenging Wrath / Crusade duration increased by 3 seconds. And here it is right here, Divine Wrath. A little bit of a weird talent. Remember, this was the same place that versatility talent was, and that talent is not here anymore. It's not on the tree at all anywhere. The only reason that I could think of that you would want an extra 3 seconds on Avenging Wrath or Crusade is because if you look at live right now, there's some setup before you can do all of your damage. So, you know, you got to get Seraphim rolling, you got to get your Crusade stacks up, you got to get back up to 5 Holy Power in most situations, and then you drop your Final Reckoning and drop all your damage. There's still a little bit of setup in Paladin. I think that's just gonna happen because we have to generate Holy Power in order to do our damage, in order to do our big damage. So maybe this is just giving you some of that time back. So, you know, you have 3 seconds to build everything up, and then you finally get your true 20 seconds or, you know, 35 seconds. So that's really the only thing that I can think of. The only other thought that I have on this is maybe it's there just as a placeholder. You know, we had something else here, they threw something else there. You know, maybe they're trying to figure out to put something here. I'm not sure. We may have a completely different talent next week. We don't know yet. Executioner's Will has been redesigned. Now increases the duration of Execution Sentence and Final Reckoning by 3 seconds. Now, there is some weirdness with the tooltip. It says Final Verdict and Execution Sentence durations are increased by 4 seconds. It should say Final Reckoning and not Final Verdict. But it also says 4 seconds on here. And then on the patch notes, it says 3 seconds. So I'm not gonna lie, I have not tested this. I didn't see that until right now when I was talking about this video. So Adjudication has been redesigned. Now increases critical strike chance by 2%, and Hammer of Wrath critical strikes cause a blessed hammer to spiral around you, dealing holy strike damage to enemies. Adjudication's right here. This is really interesting because remember, we have Vengeful Wrath now. We have access to Vengeful Wrath now. That Hammer of Wrath always critically strikes. So you're always going to get that spinny blessed hammer spiraling around you every time you cast Hammer of Wrath. if you take Vengeful Wrath. And it's interesting that it deals 3,000 Holy Strike damage versus, for my gear, 1,400 Holy damage. So remember, Holy Strike is holy and physical, and then holy is, it's just holy, it's just magic damage. So interesting to see. And because all of these go straight down into each other, so straight into Blades of Light, straight into Physical Presence, it's really interesting to see. I think our execution is definitely going to be in a better place than it is on live right now. So this is an interesting one for sure. Justicar's Vengeance now has a default range of 8 yards. More range on a melee is always good. We'll take it. Crusader's Reprieve now also affects range of Rebuke. More range on a melee is always good. This is really nice because having a melee kick is a little rough sometimes. I know that only having a little bit of range, so increased by 3 yards. It says 8 yards on my tooltip. I'm still not 100% where it's getting the 8 yards from. Rebuke by itself, it says melee ranged. And then if you take Crusader's Reprieve, it jumps up to 8 yards. I don't know if melee range is 5 yards and we're just getting 3 on top of it, or if it's a wrong tooltip or what, but hey, 8-yard Rebuke is better than melee range Rebuke. All right, Final Reckoning now lasts 10 seconds, was 9 seconds, and you deal 40% increased damage, was 50%. So this is a little bit of a buff, a little bit of a nerf. So we're doing 10% less damage, but we now have more time to do that damage. If you're like me on live right now, you're looking at your Final Reckoning window and you see it at 1 second and you're like, man, if I even just had 1 more second, I could get off 1 more Final Verdict, 1 more Divine Storm. So hey, now we're gonna get it. Imperium Legacy lockout period now 20 seconds, was 30 seconds, and Inquisitor's Ear now gains a stack every 2 seconds, was 3 seconds. These 2 talents I feel go hand in hand with each other, and I think they want them to go hand in hand with each other. So Inquisitor's Ear, remember it was down here last week, now it's up here on a choice node with Tempest of the Lightbringer. Even though Inquisitor's Ear buffs Divine Storm and Imperium Legacy activates Divine Storm, I still consider these to be single target talents, because no matter what, if you're in a multi-target situation, you're not going to wait 20 seconds to finally do a Divine Storm, because you can get a lot of Divine Storms in that time that will do more damage than Inquisitor's Ear would. But it takes 20 seconds to get up to the 50% mark. And for Imperium Legacy, every 20 seconds, if you cast a judgment, your next Templar's Verdict will cast Divine Storm with 25% increased effectiveness. If I had to guess how the damage is working on these, I think it would, your base Divine Storm due to Inquisitor's Ear does 50% more damage, and then you do 25% on top of that from Imperium Legacy, and they do work together. I have tested this, but again, it's a single target increase. It's not really going to be used even in a cleave situation. I don't think you would really want to use Imperium Legacy and Inquisitor's Ear. I think there's a lot more talents that you can take if you're in a cleave situation than both of those. So if we had the extra talent points for single target, Inquisitor's Ear and Imperium Legacy might potentially be good pickups. Art of War changes coming in. Art of War now triggers once per Crusader strike, whether it be from manual casting or auto attacks, and Art of War's chance to proc increased to 20%, was 15%. So we get old Art of War back the way it should have been, the way the light intended. I think this is really more of a bug fix than anything, because we were generating a lot of Art of War procs last week, and it was borderline too many. So this kind of just tamed it a little bit. Not that bad. Penitence is now 1 rank, and not only that, but Penitence also moved. Penitence, I think it was down here past Holy Crusader and Burning Crusade. It was side by side with Searing Light. But now it's moved up here. I think it makes a lot of sense. Expurgation burns the target for additional 81% of the damage dealt, and then you can increase that because it's a periodic effect by 50%. Expurgation going into Penitence, it just makes sense. One thing to note on Penitence, fix an issue that was causing Penitence to not work correctly with Wake of Ashes, Expurgation, Consecrated Blade, Divine Hammer, and Execution Sentence. So Penitence affects all of these things. The one that threw me off was Execution Sentence. I didn't even think about that, and I didn't even realize that. Read the patch notes. You learn things. Divine Hammer now deals damage every 2 seconds, was 1.5, and the total duration has been increased to 12 seconds, was 9 seconds. I love Divine Hammer. It's also been moved to this position. It was here somewhere. It was somewhere over here on the edge, but it's been moved over here with Consecrated Blade. I love Divine Hammer. I think it's such a cool ability, and so many people in the Paladin community have been asking for it. I like it so much better than Consecration. Consecration is moving with me in the form of a bunch of hammers. The only thing that I would say is I really don't like the 20-second cooldown. I wish it was a little shorter, but if you take Penitence with Divine Hammer, I mean, 20k uncapped AoE for 12 seconds all around you, it's pretty good. I really hope that tuning-wise, we can fit this into the rotation because it's just a cool ability, man. Vanguard's Momentum is now 1 rank. So here we have Vanguard's Momentum. It moved up. I think it was down here somewhere this last week, and I think it got moved up here. Well, one thing I want to note is the 1 extra charge on Hammer of Wrath and the fact that it will deal an additional holy power at 20%. Again, our execute just goes up in value with Hammer of Wrath. In my real quick testing, I was with Vengeful Wrath, Vanguard's Momentum. I was kind of doing a holy. I was trying to do a holy strike build. Hammer of Wrath was hitting for like almost 70k every one. So getting that extra charge and generating extra holy power, we're gonna be cruising on single target execute. And Hammer of Wrath base damage was increased by 16%, so more Hammer of Wrath buffs. Execution Sentence now causes 25% of the damage you deal to be added to Execution Sentence was 10%. This was a change in beta that really got me scratching my head, was when they nerfed Execution Sentence down to 10%. Final Reckoning was already the better talent, and then they just made it even more valuable by decreasing Execution Sentence. Now that it's back up to 25%, it's going to be really interesting to see Execution Sentence maybe coming back, especially with something like Executioner's Will, that it's been extended. I think we might actually finally be to where you take Final Reckoning for multi-target and you take Executioner Sentence for single target. Blessed Champion now correctly states that additional Crusader Strike targets are hit for 50% damage. I think this was just a wording change. I don't think this was a big change at all. Commanding Judgment now causes additional judgments to deal 50% reduced damage to targets was 85. This kind of makes sense. Commanding Judgment was doing a lot of damage in AoE packs. So, yes, it's a nerf, but yeah, we needed it. High Lord's Judgment now additionally increases the duration of Judgment by 2 seconds per rank. This change is actually really cool because you get 2 ranks of High Lord's Judgment. So your Judgment debuff, the duration of it is increased, so you have more time to generate and hit the target. I love it. This one's a bug fix. Tempest of the Lightbringer no longer consumes a stack of Judgment. What was happening was when you would use Tempest of the Lightbringer and you would use High Lord's Judgment and you would use the Judgment AoE, the second projectile from Tempest of the Lightbringer was consuming an extra Judgment charge. So now it's not doing that. So let's go. Crusader Strikes now generates 1 holy power every 2 seconds. Was every 1 attack. This one hurts my heart. I love Crusading Strikes, and it is definitely a nerf. However, we were generating a lot of holy power between Art of War, Zealot's Fervor, Crusading Strikes. We were overcapping quite a bit. So now it's every other attack. I'm sad about it, but I also understand. Righteous Cause chance to trigger reduced to 20% was 25%. This is the Art of War counterpart. Templar's Verdict, Final Verdict, and Justicar's Vengeance now have a 20% chance to reset the cooldown of Blade of Justice. I didn't do a whole lot of testing with this talent, but I didn't notice that we were generating like a crazy amount. So I'm not sure why the nerf or anything like that, but 5% I hope is not too bad. So we'll see how that affects us. Vanguard's Momentum no longer grants additional damage to Hammer of Wrath as its base value was significantly increased. That's just a change because Hammer of Wrath would have been OP. And now we get to a bunch of fixes. Fix an issue that prevented Divine Hammer from benefiting from Sanctify. Fix an issue that prevented Consecrated Ground from working correctly with Divine Hammer. Fix an issue that prevented Imperium Power from triggering from Crusader Strikes. This is one that I was actually really excited about. Fix an issue that prevented Blessings of Dawn from working correctly with Justicar's Vengeance. Fix an issue that caused Sanctify plates to not correctly increase your stamina. And fix an issue that caused your Justicar's Vengeance to not consume stacks of Blessing of Dawn. So that's the patch notes. A few other things I wanted to talk about. Some changes. Judgment of Justice was moved over here. It was here where Vanguard's Momentum was, and it got moved over here. Not a big deal. I think it's fine. I think having very quick access to Judgment of Justice is nice. I think because it's higher up on the tree, it makes it a lot more likely that we're just always going to take it. So we're just going to have more movement speed, and more movement speed for Paladin is great. And two things that I'm really excited about. So physical presence, all physical damage you deal is increased by 20%, and secondary effect not yet implemented. So physical presence will have a secondary effect. I'm really excited to see what it is, because the physical build interests me quite a bit. And on the flip side of it, Searing Light fire damage dealt increased by 10%, secondary effect not yet implemented. So Searing Light and Physical Presence are both going to get some sort of secondary effect, and I'm really, really excited to see what it is. So that's update number 2, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to connect, I have a Twitter that I'm fairly active on, @RollyRods. I also have a Discord that I'll link down in the description below. I also stream on Twitch. You can find me there. And if you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the content, please give it a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing. I'm going to be posting more Retribution Paladin content and just Paladin content in general. But that's it for me, guys. I'm RollyRods. I'll catch you in the next one.